Hello and welcome to every single book that I read in May and June. It's now July 5th that I'm filming this clip, so I'm a little bit late getting this video up. I think I read 13 books total between May and June, which is pretty typical for me. And I read some really good ones, so I'm really excited to share all the books I read with you guys. Before I get to the books that I read in May and June, I wanted to show you guys two books on my TBR for July. Number one, Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I love Ali Hazelwood so much. This is a romance between rival physicists who collide in a vortex of academic feuds and fake dating shenanigans. And then the second book I'm really excited about for July is Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I've never read a book by Catherine Center before, but I know that she also wrote The Bodyguard, which is so popular. I also own The Bodyguard and need to read it. And this is her newest book. I got sent both of these books by Book of the Month, who is the sponsor of today's video. Book of the Month is a super popular online book service for readers. They really work to promote new and emerging authors, which I love. Their team vets hundreds of books every single month and then gives their readers a choice from a curated selection. So I really love that you can spend less time researching what you want to read next, and you can trust that they have curated a great list for you and you can pick the books that you are most interested in receiving. Plus, Book of the Month is risk-free, so you can skip any time, any month, and you will not be charged. One of my other favorite things is to see what bookmark they send every single month. This one says, "In my villain era." I love that. Probably the craziest, too good to be true seeming thing about Book of the Month is that you can get your first new release hardcover for just $9.99. That is such a great price for a paperback, let alone a hardcover. And you can use my code FIREWORK to get your first book for $9.99. Okay, now to the books that I have read. The most recent book I read is Meet Me at the Lake, which I heard a lot of people didn't love this book. To be honest, I didn't want to taint my view going into it by reading any negative reviews, so I'm not sure the specifics of what people's complaints were, but I just genuinely heard that there were mixed reviews on this book. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, not 5-star best read ever, but I really enjoyed it. Basically, the book has 2 timelines. We have present day and then 10 years in the past. And 10 years in the past, Fern meets Will and they're both dating people. It's not the right time. They have this great day together, but nothing romantic happens, though they both kind of wish there were, and they decide that they're gonna meet 1 year later, but Will never shows up. So 10 years in the present, Fern is working at her mom's resort and Will just shows up there seemingly out of the blue. So they are seeing each other for the first time in 10 years. And I can see why people had mixed reviews on this. To be honest, I feel it's not this perfect swoon-worthy romance. I feel it's kind of messy and imperfect, but also very realistic about people who met at the wrong time, and also both had their own issues that they needed to work through before they could come back together and actually have their chance at romance together. I feel both of these characters definitely had their own flaws and themselves could be their own biggest obstacle, which I appreciate. I'm starting to realize I really like books with morally great characters, or just characters in general that have flaws and feel human, but also sometimes I did want to scream at them because they made me angry. Summer vibes are immaculate. Fern, her mom, owns a resort on a lake, so it's very lakey, summery, canoeing, swimming, running around in bathing suits, which is perfect for a summer read. Okay, on to the next book. Next up, I read 3 romances. The one I think I love the most is The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I freaking love this book. I feel I was stupid grinning this whole book. Lynn Painter's writing style just makes me so happy. I love so many kinds of romances, ones with morally great characters, or darker romances, or sad romances, but happy, giddy romances just make my heart so happy. And that is this book. This book is about Hallie and Jack, and they have a one-night stand at the beginning and pretty much decide that they're not into each other, and they agree to be each other's wing person to help each other find a relationship, and they strike up a little love wager that the first person to find a significant other gets a prize. There's also a surprise one-bed trope and a surprise fake dating trope halfway through the book, which was great. And they just had the best chemistry. Their banter was so good. I feel when I think of Lynn Painter, I don't necessarily think of her books specifically with really great witty banter, but she killed the banter in this book. And I also liked that because they thought they weren't into each other at the beginning, that they really became friends first, which I feel just makes it so much more meaningful when characters are friends first, because they really get to know each other. So yeah, 4.5 stars, loved this book. Then I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. I had mixed feelings about this book. I am Emily Henry's #1 biggest fan. I have said, I think a few times, that she's my #1 favorite author. author, but unpopular opinion, this book just like didn't quite do it for me. I'm so conflicted because I actually like loved the ending. Like I loved the ending so much, but for the first like 2/3 of the book, I really like went back and forth on how I felt about this book. It's about Harriet and Wynne, and they've been together for a while, ever since they met in college, and we actually have dual timeline from when they're first meeting in college to present day, where they have broken up and they're going on vacation with their friends, but they don't want to like ruin the mood of the vacation by telling everyone they just broke up, so they're pretending to be together one last time for this one last vacation with all their friends. So it's second chance romance, which in general just like isn't my favorite trope ever. And then fake dating because they're pretending to be together, which is one of my favorite tropes ever. And I thought it was just gonna be this like fun, lighthearted, like witty, banter-filled romance like Emily Henry's other books of like two exes forced to pretend to be together on a vacation. But it's not that. It honestly, for majority of it, I feel like was really sad about how realistically horrible it would be to be like forced to be near your ex who you like still love, but you just broke up. Like imagine how horrible that would actually be. And then the other thing that was frustrating to me is we don't know the reason why they broke up for a majority of the book. It's kind of like this big reveal at the end. My just like personal beliefs is that when you break up, you probably broke up for a reason and you probably shouldn't get back together unless that reason's been resolved. So not knowing why they broke up was just hard for me to root for them to get back together, because I was like, who knows why they broke up? What if something horrible happened and that's why they broke up? Like, how can I want them to get back together until I know they've resolved their breakup issues? But the things I did like, Emily Henry's writing style in this book is so beautiful. It's also outside of the romance. I loved the friendships, the dialogue and plot around just like growing up and graduating college and drifting apart from friends. So I ended up giving it 4 stars because I did really love the ending and all of the elements outside of the romance. And then I read Twisted Games, which is the second book in the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I liked the first book in this series, but I really liked this one. And I've heard that this series just gets better and better with every book, so I'm really excited to continue this series. All of the books in this series involve the same characters and universe, but they can all be read as standalones. And this one is about Bridget and Reese, and Bridget is a princess and Reese is her bodyguard, which I feel like is so fun. Definitely a slow burn, it's a thicker book and a forbidden romance. And what I really liked about this book is that they cannot be together for a reason, and it's like a big reason. I feel like sometimes in books, the like conflict sometimes for me can feel a little weak as to why the characters can't get together, but there's actually, like I said, like a huge reason why the characters can't get together. And this book also takes place over 4 years, which I also like what I was saying with The Love Wager about just like falling in love slowly. That definitely happens in this book, which I really like. It's a very spicy book too, if you like spicy books, which I do, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Next up, I read 2 fantasy books, Kiss of the Selkie and Legends and Lattes. I did not like Legends and Lattes. I gave it 2 stars. I know people love this book. I know. Basically, it's about Viv, who is an orc barbarian, and she decides that she's gonna open a coffee shop, which is such a cute premise of fantasy world meets cozy coffee shop. So she's gotta hire people, get a building, and there's also a romance subplot. But I just thought it was really boring. It's supposed to be very slice of life, very calm, very relaxing, and so I know people love it for that, and I thought I was gonna love it for that. I feel like I could love that, but for some reason I just felt like nothing happened. Somebody described in their Goodreads review that it feels like when you're playing Dinner Dash, you know, that like cooking game where like you level up and you get new floors, you level up and you get a head chef, you level up and you unlock this feature. That's what this book felt like, and that's what I kind of felt like too. I feel like the concept of a coffee shop in a fantasy world was extremely underutilized. Like this is just a regular coffee shop like Starbucks. Like why wasn't it like a magical, fantastical coffee shop? I feel like that could have been so cool to read about. Anyway, I made it like halfway through. Maybe I would resume this like in the fall if I'm in the mood for something really chill, but I don't know. I really just was so bored. And then Kiss of the Selkie. This is a Little Mermaid retelling and it was so cute. This is the 3rd book in the Entangled with Fae series, which are all fairy tale retellings. They can all be read as standalones. I am loving fairy tale retellings. I want to read more. They're so fun. I gave this one 4 stars. I feel like it's so fun that this book has so many nods to the original fairy tale, but then also has so many of its own aspects. Like it takes place in a fae world. Our main character Maisie, her kiss is lethal. This is such a cute book if you want a fairy tale retelling in a fantasy fae world. Next up is How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories. This is a collection of little short stories that exist in the Cruel Prince universe, or the Folk of the Air series universe, all following Prince Cardan, mostly when he was young, like, so we get to get more insight on him and his childhood and how he grew up, but also some stories with him and Jude that take place after the events of the whole series. And I gave this 4 stars. It's so cute. I love the Folk of the Air series so much, so it's so nice getting to be back in this world. The main best thing about this book is how cool it is. First of all, I love the cover. Without the jacket, it's also very cool. And then there's so much amazing art in this book. Every short story has its own like title page with very cool art. And then even the story pages themselves have little art and decorations. So super fast read. So if you read The Cruel Prince and the whole Folk of the Year series, I would highly recommend checking out How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories. Okay, on to the next book. Next up are the 3 books that I read for finishing every series I'm in the middle of. I gave The American Roommate Experiment 5 stars. This is technically the sequel to The Spanish Love Deception, but both can be read as standalones because they involve different couples, but like in the same universe. And I think this plot is so cute. This book is about Rosie, who has always had a crush on Lucas, who is Lena's cousin from The Spanish Love Deception. And there's some damages in Rosie's apartment, so she decides she's gonna stay at Lena's apartment while Lena is on her honeymoon. But she doesn't know that Lucas also planned to stay there at the same time because Lucas is coming on vacation to New York. So they decide they're gonna be temporary roommates, share this studio 1-bed apartment, which is so fun, the forced proximity of having to share an apartment with your crush. And then on top of that, Rosie is also a romance writer, but she has like writer's block. And so Lucas decides that he's gonna go on fake dates with her to hopefully like ignite her writing and get her out of her writer's block. So they're also like fake dating. It's just has so many fun tropes, such a fun concept. So if you want like a very swoon-worthy romance, then you will love this book. Then the final Gambit, which is the last book in the Inheritance Game series. If you're not familiar with the Inheritance Game series, it has such a crazy plot. It's about Avery, and she inherits billions of dollars while she's in high school from a stranger. So it's like this mystery of why did she inherit all this money from him? She also has to live in his house with his disinherited family, and the house is full of like secret passageways and riddles. So it's just super fun, like YA mystery, and then also has a romance subplot. And each book kind of has its own mystery, and then there's like some overarching mysteries as well. And I love the mystery in this book. It tied everything up for the whole series really well. I loved the ending. Avery does something at the end that I didn't see coming, but just like totally makes sense for her character and for the book, and I thought it ended the series so perfectly. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Overall, I would say 5-star series. I think I gave the first 2 books 5 stars. The only reason I didn't say 5 stars for this one is I just feel like the first 2 books were a little more magical and just the freshness of everything, of her just inheriting this money and the newness of the plot. But I still really loved this book. I thought it was the perfect conclusion. And then next up is Chain of Thorns, which is the last book in the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. If you are looking for a fantasy series, multiple series honestly, that like really encompass a whole universe that like you can really get invested in, I would really recommend checking out Cassandra Clare. She has a ton of series that take place in a Shadowhunter universe. They all can be read as like standalone series, but they have a bunch of crossover characters, which I think is so fun. I started with the Mortal Instruments series, then I read the Infernal Devices, and then I just read the Last Hour series. And I feel like that was a good reading order, but you can also look up reading orders online if you want to read them by publication date or by chronologically of the events that take place. Anyway, this series is super fun. It's about James and Cordelia and all of their many friends called the Merry Thieves, and they're just like fighting demons, doing their Shadowhunter duties, but we also get all of these subplots with all of the friends, which I think is really fun. You just come to care about this great big friend group so much, and they all have their own romance subplots and their own personal subplots. A few complaints with this book: I felt like the ending dragged. Like, this book is huge. It's over 700 pages, so when a book is that long, to me it's like nothing should drag, or you could just cut that. I also felt with the main romance subplot, there's a lot of like miscommunication. Like, if the characters just had like one honest conversation, the romance would have been solved so early in this book, which is pretty frustrating. And I didn't super care for the love triangle with the main romance plot. So those are my complaints, but other than that, it's a super great series. And my favorite thing about the series is all of the great friendships. Next up is The Reunion by Kayla Olson. This book is such fun concept. I love the one of them is famous trope, but this book is both of them are famous. It's about Liv and Ransom, who were co-stars on a TV show when they were growing up. And it's now 20 years since the show premiered, and they're doing a reunion episode. And they were like best friends on the original show. And then they had a falling out, so they haven't really talked to each other since the show ended. And Liv always had a crush on Ransom. So I just love the concept of like like both of them are famous, getting to go into this world of famous actors and then coming together again after such a long break to do this reunion episode. I feel like it was such a fun like setting and fun scenes, but I felt like it was a little bit boring. I just think there needed to be more conflict with the romance, so that was kind of a bummer because I was so excited based on the summary of the plot. I ended up reading this book over a few weeks just because I kept forgetting to pick it back up. I feel like how fast I read a book is always like the biggest sign of how much I enjoy it. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. Next up is Once Upon a Broken Heart and the sequel, The Ballad of Never After. I love this series. I love this series. I love this series. 5 stars for both books. Definitely in my top 5 books that I've read so far this year. I'm obsessed. The 3rd book doesn't come out till October, and the pain that I feel having to wait till October, so much pain. Like, that is gonna be my most anticipated release for 2023. Anyway, the series is about Evangeline, and her love is gonna marry someone else, so she strikes a deal with Jax, who is very charming but very cruel Prince of Hearts. So she strikes a deal with him to stop the wedding, and in exchange for him doing that, he wants 3 kisses from her to be given to whoever he wants at the time and place of his choosing. So I feel like that's such an interesting concept, and I love Evangeline. She is such a strong character, which I just love in fantasy books. I feel like all the female characters in most fantasy books are like really strong female characters, and Evangeline is that, which I love. And then Jax, like I said, like very mysterious, seemingly cruel, but like, you know, there's more to him than that. Very charming. There's like this romantic tension between them. Stephanie Garber really gives us like tiny movements in the romance plot, which is so torturous and just makes me want them to get together so much more. Like, I kind of like love-hate when there's not a lot of movement in the romance because it just makes me obsessed with having it happen. And then the whole world is so cool. It's very like fairy tale vibes, but like dark, twisted fairy tale vibes. There's all this like history to the world, but you don't quite know what is like true and not true. There's creatures, like there's humans, fates, royalty, vampires. I read the first book in like 24 hours, and then I read the second book in like 1 or 2 days after that. Absolutely obsessed. Like, I don't know what else to say to convince you to read it. I am so obsessed. And that is all the books that I read in May and June. I am so curious, what is y'all's #1 favorite book that you read in June? I'm always looking for book recs, so I would love to know. Anyway, with that, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!